I'd like to take a minute to introduce our speakers, Jack Young and Kelvin Lee, and I'll say a few words about them and then pass it over to them for the remainder of the meeting. Okay, so Jack Young is McMaster's Research Impact and Bibliometrics Librarian, supporting the use of bibliometrics data to enhance the reporting and strategic planning practices of the university, its researchers, and research units. In this role, Jack provides training and consultation on tools and techniques for tracking the impact of research and knowledge mobilization activities. He currently co-chairs this group. Yeah, that's about Jack. Kelvin Lee is a colleague of Jack's. He is the research software developer for research software development and support at McMaster University. So you have to explain the relationship with the library maybe a little bit to us. So Kelvin lends his computing science degree and experience in industry and academic research settings to support research and the researchers through software development and training. So I'm going to pass it over to Jack and Kelvin. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Laura, for that introduction. And thank you, Carl, and the Community of Practice for hosting today's session. I am just going to share my screen and we can get started. Just get a quick thumbs up. You can see my screen currently. Thank you, Talene. Okay. So today, Kelvin and I are going to talk a little bit about article processing charge data in OpenAlex, and a process that we've been working on to help our collections team at the library evaluate the impact of various transformative agreements, read and publish agreements that we've signed with publishers over the last few years. So I think, both Kelvin and I are not deeply involved in the collections area of the library, but because we had spent some time working with OpenAlex and OpenAlex data around research impact work before, when this particular issue arose, we thought it might be a good opportunity to collaborate with collections to try and test some of these processes out and see if we could, if they could help with that work. So just by way of introduction, or by way of sort of an overview of today's session, we're going to start off by just sort of familiarizing the group with this idea of what a transformative agreement is and how article processing charges and open access publishing sort of relate, and sort of why it's kind of difficult, or has been difficult, to track the true impact financially on an institution agreeing to these or engaging with these read publish agreements. I'll spend some time talking about why OpenAlex is a useful tool to at least help start these conversations and help start exploring some of the data around this space. We will then pass it over to Kelvin, who's going to talk about the process that he used to automate some of these estimations using OpenAlex data. I'm going to then talk a little bit about some of the data limitations we bumped up against when we started doing that work, before handing it back over to Kelvin, who will describe a hybrid approach that we've now adopted to get even closer to what we think is a realistic estimate of the cost savings or theoretical cost savings associated with these types of agreements here at McMaster. I'll also note too that the work that we've done is all open and shareable, and our intent is for the rest of the community, should they be interested in trying these processes at their own institutions, are more than welcome to do so, and we're happy to chat about those ideas further as well. We're going to wrap up by talking about some future considerations, and then of course we'll leave some time for some questions or any feedback you might have on anything we've talked about today. If you have questions as we're going through, I'll try to keep an eye on the chat, and if it's relevant to what we're currently talking about, I can try and deal with it right then. But if we don't get to it during the presentation, we'll certainly circle back around to it at the question period. Okay. Also, you may have to excuse my cat. She really likes wandering around when I'm presenting, so you may see her make a few appearances as well. Okay, so transformative agreements. So for those who, like us, weren't super involved with the collections area of libraries before starting this project, transformative, sometimes called read publish agreements, will offer waived or discounted article processing charges when authors at the participating organization publish open access. So basically, when we look at article processing charges as a way to offset the cost of the way the publishers use to offset the cost of providing free access to articles, right? Authors have to pay an article processing charge in order to make that work open. Read-publish agreements bundle all that into one agreement with a publisher, where a library signs an agreement that says you have access to our subscription content, and also when your authors publish with us, they either get a completely waived article processing charge or a discounted article processing charge. So in 2024, McMaster was part of 21 transformative read-publish agreements. The majority of these were through consortial deals like the CRKN and the OCL deals, but we also had a handful of locally based publication agreements as well. And so the thing that makes it tricky to actually evaluate the true value of these deals is that although most publishers will provide APC discount data to libraries in some form or another, usually in the form of like regularly scheduled sort of spreadsheets of data saying these are the articles that receive discounts. The data is far from being standardized or consistent within publishers, but especially across publishers. So it can be hard to collate all this data and to sort of pull it all together in one place. Some publishers provide the data in one form, others provide it in another. And so it's kind of a messy way of trying to really wrap our heads around exactly the true savings associated with each of these deals. So with that in mind, we wanted to explore an approach that could potentially automate this process. In other words, if we could sidestep or supplement at least the publisher supplied data with a more standardized practice. And as I mentioned, we'd had some familiarity working with OpenAlex, and we thought that this might be a good tool to explore for this purpose. So for those that may not be as familiar with OpenAlex, it's an open bibliographic database. Currently has over 270 million scholarly outputs in there. One of the main benefits, I think, for this project was that it was free to use, both the user interface and the API. That was really valuable to us because we knew that we weren't the only ones at McMaster. We knew we weren't the only ones struggling to sort of wrap our heads around evaluating these deals. So whatever work we did, we want it to be transferable to the rest of the community. And so we decided to start with a free resource in OpenAlex in the hopes that it would have a larger impact overall. OpenAlex is also really well integrated with other open data sources, which we liked as well. So Directory of Open Access Journals, Crossref, and the Research Organization Registry. It pulls data in and integrates data from all of those open data sources, which is really fantastic. And then very importantly, it has two relatively unique metadata fields for each of its publications. The corresponding institution field, which tells us which institution the corresponding author on the paper came from, and the APC list price. So these are really important because when it comes to getting an APC discount under a read and publish agreement, it's the institution of the corresponding author that has to have the agreement in order to get the discount. So in other words, in these cases, McMaster had to be the corresponding institution in order for us to really care about how much the APC cost was. Similarly, APC list price, right? This is a relatively unique metadata field within OpenAlex. What it does is it pulls any list price data that's currently stored in the Directory of Open Access Journals, DOAJ, into each individual publication record. It will put the APC list price for that publication. And when it can't find it in DOAJ, it goes out and crawls the publisher's websites and tries to pull in the current list price, APC list price for that particular journal. So just to give you a quick overview of how you can start working with this right away in the user interface, I want to take us over to OpenAlex and show you how we can quickly generate a report for your institution right within the user interface. So we're going to start in the full universe of OpenAlex results, and we're going to add some filters to get down to just the APCable works at our institution. So the first thing we want to add is that corresponding institution filter. And we can search for McMaster, or you could search for your own university. This is something important to note, is that the organization structure within OpenAlex is fed by the Research Organization Registry. So we actually see that there's a couple of distinct institutes that we would usually associate with McMaster, including things like the Children's Hospital and the Medical Center. So if we want to make sure we're being completely inclusive when we're running this search, we want to make sure we're capturing all the distinct RORs, research organization registries, IDs that are relevant to our institution. So I could do McMaster as a whole, and then it's as easy as just adding a second one by clicking the little plus on the right. We could add the Children's Hospital. So we'd add all of those, but for the sake of time, we'll just put those two in. We can then add another filter, and the next filter we want to add is the type. The reason we want to specify a type is because typically things like document types like letters and editorials and book reviews, those won't typically carry APC charges. It's largely articles and reviews that we want to focus on. Now, throughout this process, I mean, none of the logic here is completely airtight. There will be instances where certain things get APC'd and other things don't. What we're doing is trying to set the general parameters for what's most likely to happen. We're not likely to ever get like an exact to the penny estimate out of a tool like this, I don't think. But I think if we set the right parameters, we can get pretty close to a good estimation, as long as we recognize the limitations there. The third filter we'll put on is the open access status. This is important because not all open access works are subject to APCs. Here, we're going to only be interested in gold open access, which are publications that are where everything is open, but authors pay an APC upfront. And so we'll focus on gold and hybrid, which represents journals that have some closed content and some where the author has paid to make that content open. Things like green, where we're talking about self-archiving, or diamond, where there is no APC charges. We're not so interested in capturing those ones here. Now, one thing that's kind of important to note, because this kind of tripped me up at first as well, is that when we're talking about open access types, generally, I think of it at the journal level. You have like a gold journal or a hybrid journal. But what OpenAlex actually does, which makes it easier to use, is it assigns it at the article level. So a publication in a hybrid journal that was made open will be called hybrid. Publication in the same journal that was not paid to be made open will be labeled as closed. So this helps us deal with some of the confusion that could result from looking for all hybrid journals. Instead, what we're looking for is all open access articles published in hybrid journals. So it's a small distinction, but it's important, I think, for the final analysis. And then the final piece we'll put on here is the year. We've just, for this analysis, we limit ourselves to 2024. And so what we find is 961 results, according to OpenAlex, that would have been subject to an APC based on our sort of filters here. And what we could do as an initial point, starting point, is we can add APC sum stats, which is going to sum up the list price of all the available list prices of those 961 results. So this is just to give you a quick orientation to like the structure of OpenAlex, the types of filters we can use to get down to APCable works, and to show you kind of the basic use of this APC sum feature. Now, what we don't have yet, this is sort of the sum of what we would pay. What we don't have yet is any sense of how many of those would have been discounted and by how much based on our read and publish agreements. And that is what Kelvin is going to spend a little bit of time talking about now. So Kelvin, I think we're going to do a quick swap of the screen share, and I'll let you take over from here.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Are you guys seeing the screens? Okay.
Looks good.
Okay. So yeah, as Jack had mentions, we have our own automated approach to calculate this APC's data. We use something called computational notebooks to do our analysis. What are they and why do we use them? Computational notebook is an interactive document-based environment that allows us to write and execute code, which includes all the coding logic steps, our narrative text, and visualizations of our results all in one single package. So we wanted to share our results and help out the communities. Computational notebooks such as Jupyter Notebooks and Google Colab allow others to easily reproduce our results as well as replicating the analysis for different organizations. So let's get into it. So So here's the notebook itself. Our users can simply clone all the contents from our GitHub repository, which we'll share at the end of this presentations, and update the parameter code block here in the notebooks in order to run their own analysis. But before we start diving into the analysis, we again have to first define which types of work are subject to APC. So as Jack mentions, the corresponding authorships information from OpenAlex is crucial to this project. While work may include contributions from a number of different institutions, APC is typically the responsibility of the work's corresponding author. Hence, we'll filter out publications which the corresponding authors are from McMaster using the corresponding institution's ID field. But the catch is, like, this ID is an OpenAlex defined identifiers, but we have written code to retrieve this ID using a more commonly used research organization registry ID. So you can see here, we basically supply the raw ID of all 4 McMaster related institutions, and at the end it will returns the OpenAlex ID associated to those institutions. And finally, we'll filter out like publications that are either original articles or reviews using the work types and have like gold or hybrid OA status flags and published in 2024, as Jack mentioned previously. So with these parameters defined, we can start querying the necessary data from OpenAlex. So here we have a functions. We construct the API URL with the given institution ID, publication year, publication types, OA status, as well as the page number and records per page to do a recursive query and eventually concatenate all the query results into one single data frame. So as you can see, here's basically the results. We query about like 967 publications with this filters. Yeah. So after we have like all the publication data from OpenAlex, we'll apply some necessary transformations and cleanups to help us better analyzing the data in the next steps. So mainly we need to unpack the APC USD and the journal ISSN. The journal ISSN lies within the primary location objects of each publications. This primary location objects is where OpenAlex describes the locations of the best copy of this work. Despite OpenAlex has the records of the work, sometimes it doesn't have records of the work's locations. Hence, sometimes we will have to clean those records by assigning an unknown source to them. And then next would be we've also computed like an APC median from publications with known APC data. Currently, the directory of open access journals is OpenAlex primaries and I think the only source of APC data. We found that it could not provide the APC information for some publications. And what we do is to apply these aggregate values, we calculate to all other publications without APC informations. So here it is. Basically, yes, filling all the no value meanings, like we don't have APC information for those publications, and filling in the aggregated values, that aggregated median we've calculated. And what we do next is to apply the known discounts to all the publication data we've queried. So in our analysis, we use a list of journal discounts provided by our collection librarians, which is a CS3 slash spreadsheets files. And that has the ISSN of the journal, as well as like the discount informations. So we have to manually clean up this informations and added a Boolean flags to indicate whether the discount is a flat rate discount or a percentage discounts. We've included this in place of this discount information files in our project repository along with all the project source code. So at the end, like you could just need to fill in the ISSN, the discount, and then the is flat rate flag field here when you're running your own analysis in the future. So we basically read the discount informations into a data frame for future reference. Here we basically create a functions to reference the discount informations from the discount data frame we just had using the ISSNs and returned the APC costs after the discounts. And what we do next is to apply this functions to every single publications we previously queried. So here are the final result. So in 2024, our institutions would have paid about $2.91 million in APC. But after the discount given from the transformative agreements, we only paid about like $1,070,000. So theoretically, we save about like $1.85 million in APC because of these transformative agreements. And as you can see in the graph, we receive most of our APC discount from Wiley, Elsevier, PLOS, and Sage. And I think I want to pass the time back to Jack to talk about some of our limitations with this approach.
Thanks, Kelvin. Yeah, so what Kelvin just presented, right, was this approach as if the publishers had supplied us no data at all. We wanted to see what would happen if we could, how close we could get to the actual numbers if we, in the absence of any direct data from the publishers. But we wanted to look under the hood and see exactly how well that approach was working. So what we did is we took the publisher supplied list that we'd had, and we compared the DOIs on those lists to the DOIs returned through the OpenAlex approach. And what jumped out to us immediately was that OpenAlex publication list missed about 300 publications that were present on the publisher supplied list. So not an insignificant amount. And publications were missed for a number of different reasons. I've listed a few here. So first, there was a number of publications that had missing or inaccurate corresponding author data within OpenAlex. So that first filter of McMaster had to be a corresponding institution. We lost them at that stage. There was also instances of missing or inaccurate OA status data. That is, the OA status of the article at the publisher site was gold or hybrid, but by the time it got into the OpenAlex, by the time the metadata made it over to OpenAlex, it was being listed as something other than those two types. And the third was kind of a unique one where the year of acceptance and APC payment didn't align with the year of publication. So these could be articles, right, where the APCs were all paid and the article was accepted to the journal in 2023, but the final publication date wasn't until 2024. So technically, because all of the processing happened in 2023, we weren't getting a discount for that 2024 year. So this is going to happen at both the beginning and the ends of the years. We're going to have the gaps between when people pay the APCs and when the actual article is published may cause some issues when we're trying to calculate this data. Yeah, thanks, Kelvin. So I will say, though, by and large, the biggest chunk of results that were missing were due to the corresponding author data issue. So we wanted to look a little deeper at this. So what we did was we built a search strategy for just gold and hybrid OA articles published by McMaster in 2024. So the difference here is it didn't have to have a McMaster corresponding author on it. We just wanted to see any articles that McMaster was on that was in a gold or hybrid OA journal. And what we found when we looked at the corresponding author field for those 3,000 results was that over 40% of them had no corresponding author information in OpenAlex at all, which made them impossible for us to actually get to with our corresponding institution filter. We wanted to better understand why this issue might be occurring. So we took the same 3,000 articles and we ran them through Dimensions Analytics, another large bibliographic database that relies largely on cross-ref data to ingest results. What we found was only about 12% of those articles were missing corresponding author information. So I will note that the technical documentation from OpenAlex does note that there is an issue currently with corresponding authors. They're working on it, and the coverage will improve soon. But we're still not quite sure exactly what the problem is. Our understanding is that some publishers are encoding corresponding data right into cross-ref records, and perhaps those are the ones that are easiest to get the accurate data from, whereas the ones that aren't putting it right in the cross-ref records, again, I'm not entirely sure on this, but it seems like perhaps the individual databases then might go out and be crawling and looking for corresponding author information. So perhaps that's the reason for this gap, but I'm just speculating here. But all this is to say that a missing article rate of 40% to us is much more significant. If we could get this number down to the 12 to the 10% rate, we do think that this approach would become much more viable. Again, we don't believe we're ever going to get to the point where we've got it down to the penny, but obviously lowering that missing data rate would really make the ability to use OpenAlex as a tool for this much more powerful, I think. Next slide, Kelvin. Thank you. The other thing that Kelvin alluded to as well was that about 17% of the retrieved records lacked APC list price data. So in these cases, we use the median value of the known APCs in the set to establish sort of an average APC to fill in the gaps. So this one, this is less disruptive than the corresponding author information because we have a mechanism by which to estimate it. But it's still troubling in that we're still relying on estimates for nearly 20% of the list prices that we're working with. It's also important to note that APC list price is found on the publisher's website, which is how DOAJ is gathering their list prices and how OpenAlex is then gathering theirs may not represent the actual amount paid. There's things like promotional rates. There's rates, some countries or areas of the world might get discounted rates. And so, there's not always just one price that we can put in that APC list price slot. APC data in this case is going to be available for the most recent year, so it makes it hard to go backwards in time and look. And we do know that APCs are increasing, and they tend to increase a rate greater than inflation. So it's not even like something we could just apply a standard calculation to look back in time. They move at rates different than inflation. And this is also just something that the more we work with this sort of started to occur to us, was that as more organizations sign on to read and publish agreements, list price could become a less viable savings metric to actually evaluate the value of these deals. Because if nobody's paying the actual list price, if everybody is involved in these bigger agreements that get them waived APCs, then the list price becomes kind of an arbitrary number. And to the point where it actually behooves publishers to inflate that list price to make savings seem more apparent for their read and publish deals. So that's just something to keep in mind. We've gone into this with this assumption that APC list price is the best indicator of the value of the deal. But the more that people adopt these deals, I think the harder it's going to be to hang our hat on APC list price as a way to evaluate the actual value here. Next slide, Kelvin. Oh, this is you. So I'll pass it back over to Kelvin. So that's a summary of sort of the OpenAlex approach in the absence of publisher data. And Kelvin's going to talk about the next step we took to try and integrate that publisher data with the OpenAlex approach.
Thanks, Jack. So as Jack mentions, we do in fact receive a list of publications that got APC discount from publishers with whom we have a transformative agreement, such as Wiley, PLOS, and Elsevier. However, each publisher has its own standards and formats for sharing this information with our institutions. And in some cases, the data providers is either incomplete or inconsistent. So to address this, we're working with, again, with our collection librarians to consolidate and standardize the data into a unified format. This includes key attributes such as DOIs, article titles, publisher names, open access status, corresponding authorship detail, APC list price, discounts, and field of research. For any of those missing informations, we will apply our first methods, like the same process using OpenAlex to estimate values where possible. And with this approach, we estimate our institution would have paid about $2.5 million in APC. But after the discount given from the transformative agreement, we've only paid about 70,000. So we paid about $1 million less when comparing to our last estimation. And with this standardized APC data templates, we're better positioned to track and manage APC-related information moving forward. It also enables us to conduct a range of other analyses more effectively. For example, estimating theoretical saving by publishers, as demonstrated in our initial analysis, and identifying the top field of research benefit from the transformative agreements. We've also compared this curated list with the publication retrieve from OpenAlex. This will help us identify any article that should have qualified for APC discount under our publisher's agreement, but did not. And Jack will again talk about like some of the data limitations of this hybrid approach.
Thanks, Kelvin. Yeah, so as Kelvin mentioned, I think the hybrid approach has gotten us closer because we're integrating real publisher data with the OpenAlex approach to fill the gaps. But yet again, we wanted to really check under the hood and make sure that these things were operating as we were expecting them to. And what we found, whereas on the one end, right, we said OpenAlex missed about 300 publications on the publisher list. On the other end, it pulled an additional 167 that weren't on the publisher's lists. So that according to those four filters we put on, right, that should have been potentially discount eligible. So what was happening? We haven't gone through and looked at every one of these 167 yet, but we've done a survey of them so far, and we've identified some recurring themes here. So the first is that we did notice the publication dates were disproportionately skewed towards the beginning of the year. So more than a quarter of them were published in January or February. So this might lend some credence to this idea that there's this misalignment between the year the APC was actually paid and processed and the actual final publication year, which could mean which could partially explain why some of this content wasn't on our publisher supplied lists. Secondly, we did notice some situations where there was errors in OpenAlex data, right? Where we noted the issues with missing corresponding author information. We also have seen here over application of corresponding author information. So that is when you go to the publisher site, there's one corresponding author. By the time that work gets over into OpenAlex, it looks like everybody on the paper is a corresponding author. So it's over returning stuff. There was also a couple instances where there was an incorrect publication type. So where editorials or book reviews at the publisher's website became labeled articles in OpenAlex. And then the third sort of bucket were these ones that appeared to be discount eligible. There was no errors in the OpenAlex data that we could tell as it moved from the publisher site to OpenAlex. There's no obvious reason why they should be excluded. We did notice there were some cases where email domains, our researchers weren't using their @McMaster address. They might have been using their hospital address or their personal address. And we know some publishers are verifying affiliation based on domain. There were some situations where they had multiple affiliations, right? So they're at both McMaster and U of T. And so it's hard to tell, maybe they got the discount through their U of T affiliation and not through their McMaster one. So all this is to say is that although we've gotten, I think, stepwise closer to where we're hoping to get, there's still these inconsistencies and sort of special cases that are still limiting our ability to really nail down the exact numbers here. If you could go to the next slide there, Kelvin. So as far as future considerations go, I think where all of this work has pointed to us is that standardization is key. So the work that we've done, we think, has gotten us to a point where at McMaster on a local level, we think we can provide a pretty good estimate of the amount of cost deferred through these transformative agreements. And that may be useful for internal reporting, even for maybe like collections budgeting and that type of thing. But if we really want to get down to the numbers, right, the publishers are the ones that have the numbers. And so we need to, I think, demand increased transparency and standardization from the publishers to make sure that we get the real data right down to the cents to be able to make informed decisions about these agreements moving forward. The other thing we notice is that like tons of people are working on this. There are tools that are being developed, like OA Switchboard and Consortium Manager. There's documentation that's being created, like the NISO recommended practice for open access business processes, which was just open for feedback and is now, I think, in its final stages of being reviewed. And then individual libraries and librarians and consortia around the world are all sort of grappling with this. And so, I think the question that we're kind of left with is like, is there a way we can better collaborate and come up with shared solutions here? And then the final point I just want to highlight is what we've been terming APCs in the wild. These are ones not covered. These are publications not covered under our read publish agreements, in which we have no line of sight to the APCs that our authors are paying to publish in these spaces. So what's the impact of that on our institution? And for us, it seems like currently, because we don't receive information from the publisher every time our researchers publish in these journals, the OpenAlex approach that we've been exploring really seems like one of the few spaces where we can explore this data. But as noted, until that corresponding author data gets improved and more normalized, it's hard to really make strong estimates with that much data missing. So all of this is just, I think, we've learned a ton going through this process. We think we've, as I say, I think we've gotten to a point where we feel like we have a pretty reasonable estimate. But when it comes to actually like negotiating what the cost of a deal should be, it feels like we still are waiting on increased standardization from the publishers so that we can better do this. I think that's all, right, Kelvin? Next slide is just the thank you and question slide. Yeah. So thank you so much. As Kelvin said, we've shared our source code and the APC notebook source there. Please feel free to clone those repositories and try it out with your own institution if you should be interested. And there's our contact information there. We'd love to chat if you're working on a similar project or if you have any questions about this specific project. Yeah, thank you so much for your time. Happy to take any questions you might have now.
Jack, yeah, I'm happy to look at the chat if so you don't have to manage both. There's a couple comments. There was a comment about the types of articles, which I think you sort of covered. Types of articles might be excluded from certain agreements. I don't know if you wanted to chat about that at all, but you had that listed in some of your limitations.
Yeah. I think that's, and I think maybe what maybe the distinction here is that maybe certain agreements might have different rules, that to blanket just articles and reviews may not actually be the case, and there might be more details in individual publisher agreements about the types that get waived or not. So that is that's an element we didn't take into account there, but a good one to point out.
There's a comment about Mark Schwartz at Queens did an APC study a few years ago where he was able to work with his research department and get an account code for APCs. I think that's something we've talked about in the past here, even trying to get the people finance to actually put something that you can request data from internally.
Yeah, McMaster's in the same boat with that. That does seem, for those APCs in the wild, the ones for which we don't have a line of sight because the publishers aren't like obliged to give us any information on it. It seems like the best approach is to record it right within our own research accounts. So I'd be interested to learn more about that particular project. I know that it's something we've thought about here. The actual implementation of it seems to be the stumbling block kind of thing.
Yeah, getting people here to think that's a priority project to work on. So there's also a comment, okay, publisher reports change formats often, sometimes several times in the same year, and it's been a burden on the sustainability of aggregating these reports at our library. Just curious about how you've handled those changes in your hybrid approach. Have you had to change your code often?
So on this, and Kelvin, if you have any more details, I'll leave it to you as well. But just to address first the hybrid approach this time around has been very manual in collating the data. That is, so taking the 20 spreadsheets that we get from the publishers, and then we created this 15 column spreadsheet, and which was just copying and pasting columns. And the hope was that if they keep coming in the same format, well, then we could automate that process. That is, from Elsevier, we want column A to go to column B, and so on. From Nate Springer, we want column C to go in here, and so we thought, well, we can automate that. But as you point out there, Aaron, even the publishers' reports themselves will change, and so that degree of automation seems to be problematic as well. So our intent on the first attempt at this was to do a lot of it manually, and then compare how the reports change or stay the same from year to year, so that we could hopefully automate further. But if they keep shifting things around, we're going to be stuck doing a lot of that manual work still, and using the OpenAlex automation approach to simply fill the gaps where they exist. Great question. I don't know, Kelvin, do you have anything to add to that piece?
No, like Jack mentions, consolidated and standardized those reports are done manually by our collections librarians. So in terms of changing, like updating the code and notebooks, it doesn't take it doesn't require too much change, because like we already have like the code logics written there. Again, it's just like we import one data set with that data in place that we had from our collection librarians, and then just applying the same logics to publications with missing values, and that's pretty much it. So
there's just a few comments, I think. Thank you for sharing your notebook, Kelvin. Anne says, I think adding to the frustration that Jack was mentioning around, like, are the APCs posted online from publishers even like valuable to us? But now there's even a sliding scale of prestige pricing. Okay. That's fun. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I see tears here. And then William said, oh, okay, so sharing, is that your code book, William? I did some work along those lines earlier this year, he says, which I had to set aside, but we'll come back to. Okay.
Nice. Thanks for sharing, William.
We have a few more minutes to answer questions or comments. I think one of the questions that I had, Jack, you may have answered, because I was thinking, yeah, like, how confident are you in sharing this internally with some of these limitations? And I think what I got from what you were saying is that you are fairly confident at least being usable internally. So if people are wanting to replicate this process, they might also find some value internally to their institutions.
Yeah, I think that there's a couple there's a lot of different like communication cases here, and the one that we've been most focused on at this point, because for the most part, it's not our collection department that's negotiating these deals, where most of them are part of the consortial deals. But what we're interested in expressing to the university community, to McMaster more broadly, is that these APC prices just aren't free. There's a cost associated with them being now free or discounted for the researchers. And so our university librarian wants to be able to communicate to the rest of the university, for budgeting purposes and things like that, that like, this is how much more we are paying, and this is how much, this is the for these read and publish agreements, and then this is the resulting savings or the theoretical cost avoided for various researchers, departments, etc., at the university. So one thing we're currently working on is linking the individual researchers, the McMaster researchers, to their respective faculties and departments within the university, so that we can even more granularly go to departments and say, hey, like these deals have saved this much money for your authors, kind of thing. To just make sure everybody has a clear understanding, and that this way of thinking is being built into budgeting processes for the library's collection. That the cost of our collections has increased significantly because of them, but that the cost savings for the rest of the university has kind of helped balance that out. But there needs to potentially be a reshifting of funds to make sure that the library is still able to collect the things they need to collect. So yeah, we're still working on linking the individual researchers to their departments. We're trying to figure out the best approach for that. But what we've done in the meantime, and Kelvin alluded to this, is we've linked at the article level, we've linked to the fields of research for each individual article, which can kind of act as a proxy to the likely department that this or the likely, at least faculty probably, that these deals are helping. So at McMaster, very health sciences focused. So by far the two top categories are health related ones. Yeah, thanks, Kelvin. So yeah, lots of different ways to think about communicating this data. When it comes to internal communication, we feel pretty confident. If we were to try and load, say, if we were to be sitting, across the table from Elsevier and trying to figure out exactly how much we should be paying for one of these deals, I may be being naive, but like it seems that it should be on the publisher to be telling us directly how much money they're waiving. But I think we have some work to do on standardizing those processes a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. And it would be wonderful if we could get that data internally about how much authors are actually paying. But I know so if anyone has sort of really, I don't know, wonderful methods that they were able to accomplish that, it would be nice to hear about as well. All right, we have a few more minutes. I'm not seeing any more comments. So I guess I will just say thank you to Kelvin and Jack. This was really informative. I have a feeling like it might be a highly viewed recording because there's some methodology stuff that people are probably wanting to review for sure, but we appreciate you sharing your code as well. And just wanted to remind people to sign up to the listserv and use it as like a way of communication with the people here today and on the listserv. Don't shy away from actually emailing that listserv. Hopefully people will respond. Yeah, we have our next one. What did I say? Shoot, I'm forgetting the date, December 2nd, right? Coming up. So it will come up very shortly. Yeah, thank you so much. I'm seeing thank yous. Yeah.
Thank you for having us. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. See you. Have a good one.
Bye.
All right. Have a wonderful day. Bye now.